Hello, everyone. My name is Amy Davis, and I am the MIT Alumni Golfers Association MIT Staff Liaison. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this virtual gathering, Golf Architecture, an Unconventional Look featuring Cynthia Dye McGarey. Our program will start with a conversation between Cynthia and MIT Alumni Golfers Board member, Ken Wang, class of 1971, who will introduce our guest and begin our program. This will be followed by a Q&A. During the webinar, the chat feature is disabled, but we encourage you to submit your questions via the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. I will now pass it on to Ken.
Hi, thanks a lot, Amy. Can you hear me well enough?
Yes.
Cynthia, welcome, and thank you very much for doing this. We really appreciate your willingness to. We're going to be talking about a number of different topics, I think, but by way of background, I should say that Cynthia, I guess, was, if I can talk about educational stuff, she was a horticultural and landscape architecture major in college at Arizona State. And then she proceeded up the road to the liberal arts school that we all know and love at Harvard, and where she got a degree in landscape architecture and environmental analysis. So she started as a landscape specialist, a landscaping person, but somehow has ended up designing golf courses in some very, very exotic places. And of course, the other thing that distinguishes her, I think, is that she's part of a very, very renowned family. I think most of you know as golfers. She's the niece of Pete Dye. And I guess one way or the other got drawn into the family business. I don't usually like to list things, but I will very quickly. She's obviously done courses in the United States, but if you look at her actual record, and I'm going to read from the list, forgive me. Portugal, Italy, China, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, Japan, Azerbaijan, Panama, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, and Russia. So she has been around the block a bit, and maybe we'll start by having her kind of tell us how did she go down this path, this kind of interesting path from landscape architecture to designing golf courses in some very interesting places. So Cynthia, please.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending this webinar, and Ken for inviting me or cornering me into it. But anyway, as you said, I grew up in the golf business. My father and my uncle originally weren't in the golf business. It wasn't until I was like 14 that they decided to make a business out of golf course architecture. My dad was actually a chemical engineer out of Yale, and my uncle was life insurance salesman. But they, as a young age, their father built a golf course in our hometown, a small town in Urbana, Ohio. And so they learned to play golf. And actually, my Uncle Pete was a very good golfer, amateur golfer. Anyway, so actually, when my uncle and my aunt, who was the best golfer in the family, Alice O'Neill Dye, they decided to build their own golf course. And then my uncle said to my dad, when he was on the operating table with cancer, said, I think we can make a business out of it. I think it was more or less to give him a will to live. But anyway, so my dad opened the first office. My uncle never had an office. He never even signed a contract in his life. But in our hometown, my dad would recruit everybody in the art department to come and work on plans. So I grew up with my sister and I tracing contour maps. So I learned to read maps at a very young age, and he actually liked to build models. So we would cut cardboard out and build models for him of different sites. And then I'd run off to play baseball or something. I wasn't really that interested in the business. But I decided at that age, I wanted to be outside. So I wanted to be in landscaping. I love plants. I would mow people's yard before I'd have to go in and dust. But anyway, that kind of put me into working with the family. My dad started traveling a lot. He'd take us to different places where he was working. And that was always, a lot of fun for our family. I'm one of 8 children. So I started seeing, I was like the only person that left our town at that, from Urbana, Ohio. Nobody really leaves the town of 10,000 people. Anyway, so I ended up going to ASU. I was in the landscaping. I had my own landscaping business. I did housing remodels. In Arizona, I lived for 22 years. My father got involved in a project in Arizona, which was 9,000 acres, which I helped master plan when I was going through school and working in the desert. I love the desert. So that was always my passion, is desert climates, and it was a big change for Arizona at that time, because before, everything was watered real heavily. It was green or it was rock, and there wasn't such thing as desert landscaping. And now if you go to Arizona, it's incredible. But anyway, from there, I was always just the landscape person until my cousin Perry took me to Japan. And I went to Japan, and from there I went to lots of different places, traveling doing golf courses with my cousin. And then finally it came my turn. It's like, you can do this yourself. I started getting clients, and I started my own company. And that is how I eventually got into golf course architecture.
Well, I know from some personal experience, though, that as a family, though, it seems certainly that everyone used to get involved. I mean, Alice got involved, and as you say, your cousins Perry and Pete's sons got involved. And how about that whole process of being a Dye in the world of golf course architecture, particularly as Pete's fame grew? What was that like?
Uncle Pete was, I mean, he was awesome. He was, I mean, you know him well. He's the most underassuming person in the world. And he really is a hands-on architect. I mean, he didn't do plans. My father was the first one to actually produce plans. It's always about going out and experiencing the site and the people, and he was always there. So that's what I was instilled at me as a young age, is that you needed to be there if you want to get what you want done. And I think that's why his golf courses are so successful, because it wasn't dreamt up on paper. It was his knowledge of golf and the site and the conditions that he was able to create, the modern day template for modern day golf.
But in terms of kind of bringing the family together on projects, I know from personal experience, because as you know, I had some involvement there. It always seemed that it was kind of somewhat of a community affair as well. I mean, it's obviously Pete's inspiration, but I know your Aunt Alice she was quite outspoken about stuff. And the family in general, it almost seemed that everyone would kind of get together and throw ideas around the room and argue a little bit and all that kind of stuff. That was my impression. Is that a fair appraisal of how it was done?
Yeah, especially when I was traveling abroad. I had brothers and over there working in the business. I mean, I went over there I saw family, at one time I had 5 children living in China. And it's like, if I want to see my children, I have to go to China. I have to go to China. So yeah, it's always been, if I had any questions, I just pick up the phone, call Uncle Pete, or Aunt Alice. And, there was, they were always our checks and balances to everything we did. And it was always fun working with Uncle Pete. It's like, well, how are you going to play that golf course? I remember doing on the first project, I was actually the design coordinator and manager. And I went to his house in Carmel, and I was working on the green details, and they were playing the Open at Southern Hills. And I'm like, Pete, why don't we do greens like that? He goes, you can. So back to the drawing board.
Yeah, well,
Now it's like, are you learning how to make flat greens not flat?
Well, let me move on to kind of an obvious question. And maybe you want to cue up that next chart. But there aren't a lot of female golf course architects involved in the industry. I remember
No.
Jan Stevenson at one point took a shot at it, but I know you've got some feelings about that, and I think we're kind of curious about it, and particularly given that you have all these overseas commissions, it almost seems as though there's more latitude and a little bit more willingness overseas than there is in the United States to kind of engage female architects. So I'm kind of curious what your views are without getting too political about it.
I won't, I promise. No, there's two women architects in the American Society of Golf Course Architects, me and Jan Bell Jan. And obviously they put us in the front row so people can find you. But this is the ASG summer meeting photo. And Jan is the past president of the ASGCA. The only other female has been was my Aunt Alice. She was. So yeah, it's been really, I mean, as a designer and having an office, even recruiting women to work in your office, it's difficult because it's not just so much, it is a male dominated sport, all in all, but it is changing. Women are definitely, what are they, 34, a third of the players on a golf course today. And as far as junior golf, they make up almost 50%. So it's changing, but I think since I've worked in this business all my life, it kind of goes right over my head. So does Jan. Jan's been in it all her life. So it's not something I kind of pay attention to. Yeah, I do know I get criticized, I get looked at, not just because I'm a woman, but it's because I'm a die. Also, it's becoming, having a famous name is almost, more difficult on me because I have to be better, than a fellow architect would have to be, Well,
let me ask you a funny question, which is, do maybe an obvious question or a funny question. Do you think that a woman's eye on a golf course is different than a man's eye in terms of architecture? I mean, do women design different courses? And specifically, the reason I ask is, I love playing up tees, which typically are women's tees, frankly, but in most cases, on die courses. I mean, I think I'm a terrible golfer, and I think it's just there's better courses in a funny way the farther up you go. And I don't know whether that's a factor here or not, but I'm kind of curious as to whether there's a different eye or a different sensitivity that's brought to it by a female architect.
Well, my Aunt Alice, she developed the forward tee system. I'm sure you probably got a poster of it, and it's designed on how long, basically how far average woman hits it. And it was a big movement. And then it was also a cost estimate, how to build those forward tees. What is it going to take for a club to move everybody up? And I'll tell you, the biggest resistance to that are women. It's the women's group that says, oh, I can't play at somebody else's club, But I think as far as tees, I think there is a big momentum. It's called Tee It Forward to move everybody up. Then it's basically, starts with the pace of play, getting people around the golf course. People don't want to spend that much time on a golf course these days. So having these long stretched out golf course, which 1% of the people can play, you're building to is not conducive to your average player and what you're trying to achieve as a golf course operator. So I don't think it's just me looking at it, but I do believe that I think, I don't know what Jan, well, I'm sure Jan, but a lot of people are, it's more about making it playable to everybody, and really thinking, I mean, my uncle really made me think, well, how are you going to play this, and I always think about it from my perspective that I'm not the greatest golfer. I grew up playing tennis, I know the game, I know all the numbers, I know where people hit it, I study it. So I do not build a golf course that people can't play. It's just not, I have to, all the golf courses I build are for everybody. Yeah, I'm gonna have tournaments on my golf course, but that's less than 1% of the people that are gonna play your golf course. So I think you get a lot of, and I don't want to, this is not general, is there are some people out there that male golfers, a lot of the men architects, they have come from a very strong golfing background. They're great players, they're single digit, and they build to their game. They don't know the game of the average player. And I think, but with all the numbers, it's changing. People are adapting, but it's much easier to build a more difficult golf course than it is an easy one. As you know, you can place pin placements on a green and make it as difficult as you want. You don't have to have 7,600 yards on your golf course to make it difficult. Then you have, then you don't, the tees don't work.
That brings up an interesting question. I mean, you talk about the courses with great repute. In many cases, of course, they're the older courses, where the famous opens were held or the famous tournaments were held. What makes a great golf course today? Because as you say, you can vary the difficulty. You can do a lot of kind of tricks of the trade, I guess. But to you, what makes a great golf course? And has that changed? Is that different than you think it used to be? Because, one will hear about certain courses, which I won't name, where they have tremendous reputations and no one likes to play them. And I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on that. It's a little bit of a deviation of topic, but I'm kind of curious.
Well, I think a great golf course is first of all, it's got to be, well, I'm going to start, it has to be environmentally.
Right.
That's my first priority. I don't like golf courses that don't work environmentally. I think that's probably that's a whole different subject on future of golf. But I really think it has to be playable for the people that are going to play it. Now, every client has their own vision of what they want, and that's your first directive is, who am I building for and what am I building? Because golf courses are part of a bigger infrastructure. Typically, they're part of a community, they're part of a a housing division or a resort. And you have to understand, who are you actually building this for? And then, most clients say, well, I want a tournament. We'll see that. I have a golf course in Iraq. We'll see when you get your tournament.
Well, no, one thing I guess I've come to realize from personal experience is, golf courses are kind of set. I mean, like once it's there, of course you can fiddle with it, you can change things around and stuff, but you have to have a point of view with the architect you pick and with the kind of course that you hope that architect will build for you. But once you've done that, so you're sitting there trying to figure out from a marketing standpoint, if nothing else, or an aesthetic standpoint, you're trying to figure out, who is my audience? And it can be the duffer who, shoots 130, or it can be the, 2 handicapper or 3 handicapper.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you can adjust things like the pin placements and the tees and all that. But how does one solve that problem? That there is you have an average golfer, but you have many, many categories.
How do you solve from many different categories? Well, it's the tees. It's length. Length is your #1 handicap on a golf course. Mm-hmm. And then all the other hazards come into play on what makes it more difficult, whether, water being probably the #1 hazard for playability. And that gives you your golf ratings, as you well know. And then it's the hazards, but length is always your #1 factor in making a golf course difficult.
So the art is in placement of the tees and the landing areas and all that.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And, I learned from my Uncle Pete, old golf courses, why they keep extending it back, because they play through the hazards anymore. You know, they keep adding tees to these to make them longer, to bring those hazards back into play as they were played, you know, 100 years ago or whatever, you know, and it's very difficult because you get people that play it and they're used to, oh, not having those in play. But now you're bringing it back, and it's also brings it back. Distance is a factor. So you now have, for the professional player, you place your tee back. So I mean, I know Uncle Pete always didn't even let the cart path go by those back tees. You know, I've seen articles written they were tees for freaks, but but it's, you know, for people that are that long, it's to make it older golf course more, you know, put it back.
Well, I do remember on my course that Pete actually said, you know, that he would preferably close the back tees for several of the holes.
Right.
He literally didn't want short golfers to be hitting from deep tees, you know, from long tees.
Yeah, I mean, that's a problem, and then that, you know, that affects the image of the golf course, because then it, you know, people they don't get around it. They complain, you know, but if they just play the right tee, you know, and I have this golf course I built in Portugal, and they do it by handicap. If you can't play to this, you don't belong on that tee. And then I'll see somebody back there and they can't even get it off the tee to the ladies' tee, you know, like, what are you doing? You know, why do you do that? Because you can't possibly enjoy the game. I mean, golf to me is supposed to be fun. And I get so frustrating when you go out with people and they just are so frustrated. You know, it's like, tee it up and have a good day.
I was hoping you wouldn't tell my personal story, but that's okay. Let me ask you a different question. When you design in foreign locations, and you've done a lot of that, obviously, is there a different sensibility to all these issues? I mean, do they look at it differently? Do the owners out there and the golfers out there look at it differently, wherever out there is?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think one of my more, you know, I would say the Asian culture is more difficult because it is more male, and they play on the same tee regardless of their handicap. You can have 5 sets of tee and they'll all tee up on the same tee because that's the group they're playing with. So it's really hard to get them around a golf course and it's usually they play 1 tee back further than what they should be playing, because they aren't the longest hitters, but they're usually pretty straight. But they'll just hit the ball and run.
Yeah, I actually will say to friends who are much better golfers than I am, you know, that if I go to a front tee, you know, you don't have to play with me, you know, we can be apart for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
You know, but
oh, and God forbid if you put, you know, you can't, always have to differentiate, you know, you're like, okay, I can put, you know, these tees are so close together, I'll make one big tee, but if it's a ladies' tee, it has to be separate. Because nobody wants to be accused of playing on a ladies' tee, but you.
So you have to really take the culture into account, I guess, obviously.
Yes, it's definitely culture driven. I'm having in the Middle East, they're very much it's a new market, new golfers, and they want 5 sets of tees, and they'll do it more by handicap. So does Europe. Europe does more things by handicap than any place. Yeah, well, and they kind of adopt that.
Well, America is interesting also, I guess, because it does seem, you know, that more and more the interesting stuff going on, or the play seems to be, you know, putting up the Bandons or the Sandhills or the cabin, you know, remote locations where you can get the land and you can build all these wonderful courses. And that seems to be a trend a little bit, that people play their neighborhood courses, but they all want to go to these resort kind of situations. I don't know what that means for design. I don't know whether that's, you know, whether it's hard for an architect these days to design in a more traditional, more convenient location, urban locations. Maybe they're all taken. Maybe you can't redesign. I don't know. But how do you feel?
I think it's rather sad, to tell you the truth. I see golf designs imitating environments that, I mean, if you look at Bandon Dunes, all they had to do was go and practically lay down the grass. You know, it was no earthworks or anything. They didn't have to create, it was already created. It was find the golf holes. So, I mean, that's, you know, just that's a rarity you get, and there are certain architects that won't work on anything but that type of terrain. But then there's a whole thing. Yeah, my local golf course where I had to create something, you know, you had to, it's your golf course, you had to create it. It wasn't there, you know, it's not a natural terrain. That's, I mean, that's more difficult to do that than actually finding. But then if you take, you'll see golf courses that simply do not fit the mold of making it into abandoned dunes. They don't, it's not the grass types, it's not the environment, you know, and they try to imitate it, and it looks, it's a maintenance problem.
And it sounds as though
It's easier to maintain if you're trying to create something that isn't, that looks natural but it's not. It's very difficult in maintenance.
it also, yeah, I mean, it also seems hard to get anything changed anymore. Certainly if you're within the United States, you know, in more populated areas, it's really, really hard to get approvals of things anymore.
Well, you're in New York, you're in Connecticut or New York.
Yeah.
But that's probably the biggest business in the United States today is remodel. And there's lots of, especially after the coming out of the pandemic or during the pandemic, because that's one sport people could play. It brought a lot of pressure on golf courses. Because of the amount of play. I mean, you look at a golf course that we belong to, they were up 70%. Nobody could, you know, that's one thing they could do. And the pressure it put on the golf course, now they want to remodel it because it wore it out. It didn't have that sustainability for that type of play. So, you know, it needed updating anyway for irrigation and, you know, water and other issues. But there's a lot of remodeling going on to reduce cost of maintenance, especially in California where you have water issues, reduction of turf, and matching the turf areas to the water allotment, finding different water sources, which we talked about in this report, is looking at your typology. What type of water, what kind of water, how can you treat the treatments of water, the system to that were not part of the system when they were first designed. So you see a lot, that's for American architects, that's the bulk of their business. Yeah, you read about the abandoned dunes and the stream song and all those type of places, but you know, that's because that's what people like to write about. I mean, it's a pretty picture. You don't see, very rarely you don't see the other people. I mean, there are articles written about different things for like flood control. I mean, those are more important to me, you know, because it can be a big part of the infrastructure on correcting some of the and the environmental concerns that we have today.
So when you start a project, where do you start? I mean, obviously you start with aesthetics, but I mean, do you start kind of, I realize they've always said it's golf courses are giant drainage issues or whatever, but where do you actually, where does your head go? Where does it go to begin a project?
Well, the first is the client, and you know, analyzing where it is, the culture, you know, like maybe I'm working in Korea, it's who I'm building it for, what type of development. And then it's topography. You have to look at the topography, send me the maps, you know, and you have to be, that's the most important to understand that in the hydrology and all the other things that are going to go on and the earth movement and what needs to happen to create the vision that your client wants.
Okay, and whom do you recruit for this process? Because obviously there's a lot involved in everything, soil and water and topography and moving earth. And
the report I have is 182 pages in Saudi, but I really like it because you get to work with you know, all different expertises, you know, from hydrologists to soil engineers, you know, all the studies, the people that come into why to make this project work. And B, I mean, we're working on net zero. So
are you actually working, it's actually net zero? That's actually the realist. Wow. That's not, but that's a
And zero
target.
carbon too. So, I mean, those are the goals.
I do remember you mentioning that that you actually hired a lot of MIT people as consultants for different things, which I think we all appreciate.
Yeah, I have they're one of the foremost water civil engineers in the world, and I'm really lucky to be able to work with them. And it's really inspiring to me. To me, in golf course architecture and building a golf course, I like building. I'm like, we're, as my uncle said, we're just builders. We like to be on the ground building things, and I like the challenge of figuring out how are you going to get that done, and it can be done, and it's amazing that it's not done.
So tell us a little bit more about some of these projects in the more difficult locations. What's that like? I mean, I guess it's like anything else, it's hard, so it's hard, but I'm kind of curious if there are any stories that you have about particular problems.
Well, every location's different, and it's, you always have I always have high expectations of how I can get get a golf course built that actually I like the naturalist, the terrain, and how to, even if it was degraded, how to bring it back to where it's original, what it should be environmentally and plant material and the habitats. So I guess you have the slides or whatever, but the one I actually built in Portugal took 11 years to get permitted, kind of like yours, Ken. I spent a lot of time on that ground, and it was a forest. That you could see the pine trees kind of left, but you could not walk through that place. The pine trees were planted back in the 30s as pulpwood all over the coast of Portugal, and you'll see eucalyptus grows too, the same thing. And the government was very restrictive when you get your permits. They mapped out all the vegetation, and we couldn't, taking down every pine tree was going to be an issue. Well, guess what? All the pine trees have a pine beetle, and then next thing they want you to take them all down. But so one day we get our permit, the next day all these pine trees came down. Well, I didn't know what we were going to end up with, but you could not see from anywhere on that site, you could not see the ocean. And today you see the ocean from every hole. And all the native habitats that were there all of a sudden came to life. It's so vibrant with all the different changing seasons of the native plant material. But also you get invasive species. So it's not an easy thing to get under control because there are so many invasive species out there. So having that much habitat is hard work for the superintendent, but at the same time, environmentally, and the wildlife to come back is incredible to see that transformation.
So how do you orchestrate all the various trades and types of expertise that are needed? I mean, that's a massive undertaking. I'm just looking at the charts here.
Well, they put before we even start, they do major studies on the flooding, the water systems, that usually hydrology is, pretty, you have to acquire that information. It usually before a project ever gets to that, okay, I can build in this area, it all has to be studied. In Saudi, I'm working on the Red Sea, the marine life is so protective. Nothing can go into that marine life. And they have the natural drainage systems, whether they're macro, like in Saudi, they're wadis, and there could be little streams or tributaries, like on your golf course, that actually, you don't think of it, but it goes into a major, it's one link to another major system that goes to another major system. So whatever starts upstream, feeds down. So that's all type of things you have to look. And then it's ecological restoration,
Is this the kind of, the complexity of this, particularly when you go to these more remote and difficult locations, Is that any kind of a factor you think I mean, I remember, I think it's Fazio who said he won't do anything outside New Jersey now or something like that. I mean,
What?
that he won't do anything far from home.
Oh, yeah.
And is that a big factor? I mean, that do the kind of well-known American architects prefer not to take on these types of issues? And it seems like it's getting more and more complicated. Even
There are certain architects that do. I mean, it is a small group of us out of that whole group that actually do international work. I pretty much know, who I'm going to run into or compete against. It's usually the same group that have international firms. I've been doing this for a long time, so I'm very comfortable. For people that, work in their region of maybe North Carolina, they would feel really out of place going to, say, Iraq.
right.
Or any place else. But
would they also lack the expertise though for some of these more extreme locations?
Well, it's a coordination that needs to happen. I'm not the expert in all these fields. It's coordinating all the expertises you need to pull off a project that is got the resilience that you and sustainability that you want. Not that I don't. That somebody, a lot of these guys are, they're all well educated. They're a lot of them are landscape architects, planners, have background, but working in foreign cultures and learning the way they work is always a challenge. You've got to be adaptable to all the different factors that are going to come, players that are going to come into it. I don't always get to pick who I want. Somebody's got a brother or cousin or somebody, and then, so it's not, you don't get to call all the shots, but, hopefully you get you get a pretty good team. And I'm really excited about working with the team I'm working in Saudi, because I think it's really, it's a big undertaking, and you get the best brains in the business for what they do, and I'm really excited to be part of it and learn from it.
And without
I'm not taking on 80 jobs either.
How many jobs do you do at a time? Just out of curiosity.
They're always different phases of it. We are a hands-on architect, and I know you saw a lot of us when you were doing your golf course. We don't limit our site visits, even in places as far as, Saudi Arabia. We're there for them. So I like to have no more than 2 projects under construction at the same time. I always have, you could be working on a golf course and it take 10 years to get permitted. So, there's always different phases of the process of designing a golf course.
I've got a particular question, or kind of a small question. Is there any difference between designing a private course like a country club and a public course, or an open to the public course?
In designing it from the scratch, I would say yes, in the fact, well, it really depends on the public golf course, but for most of the part, private country club will, I guess it's what the money they're going to put into it.
Sure. I mean, I'm wondering if you approach from a design standpoint, do you do it
in public golf courses? You usually have to work with a lot of different you call it
authorities.
I was gonna say, I don't want to say anything bad, but it can be a real pain. Politicians,
Okay.
And rather in a private, it's easier to design for, because you're usually designing for a client.
Right.
And
forgive me, I think there were 1 or 2 more charts that we were thinking about putting up. I don't know. Melissa, I don't know if you have that handy, or here we go. Do you mind walking us through this? This is an MIT crowd, so we thrive on charts.
It's
and
actually Harvard, MIT. Too.
Okay.
So I got to share it. I'm
No,
told.
No, I know the liberal arts people get involved once in a while too. I understand. So,
Right. Well, so what, you know, this is the project and a chart we did for Saudi, and it's really there's so many different elements you have to look at when you're trying to look at a holistic approach to designing a golf course. And there's lots of typology options. So first you have to look at the water sources. You know, in Saudi, it's anywhere from runoff to, we have the saline, we have the STP plant, we have evaporation, and there's so many different things have to go into how are we going to supply the water. The brackish groundwater is a source of water, and we mix it, and then we pick grasses to make sure that they will tolerate the type of water that we're actually going to be able to get. So it's a whole system that we look at all the sources and how we can treat them and the connections of these sources to be able to develop a zero carbon net zero golf course.
I'm just looking at. I've not seen it. I have not looked at it in detail before. It's kind of complicated. Very
So
interesting.
you can see that the Wadi system is a source for the brackish water. We're not taking direct seawater. You have the desalination plant that's for this. This resort actually has 5 different hotels. It's their wellness resort. You have the Six Senses, the Rosewood. There are major resorts being built on this property. We are this little much of it, but anyway, so we look at not looking at the whole system that's the sal plant and the solar fields that are going to feed the resort. We're looking at being our own little center that we actually can take care of ourselves right there on site.
I'm kind of curious. I'm actually. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised that it's so complicated already in a place where I would have thought, aside from the fact that it's desert, might not be as bureaucratic and it's kind of, forgive me, anal as they are in America. But I mean, are there places where they just slap up golf courses now, or does one have to go through this type of process in some form almost everywhere?
No, this is a mandate by Saudi to have it. It has to be geo certified. All the golf courses that they're building. But so, for instance, I was in Iraq. You know, I wanted to bring in a more sustainable engineering to the site. When I got there, you know, there's no water in Iraq. Well, I've got a lot of water. I looked at the end of the property, and when I first visited, and the golf course is in a valley, and there's a highway on the upper side of it with a 60-inch pipe underneath it. I'm like, whoa, what's going in coming through here? And they're like, oh, we didn't see that. The engineers, the land planners were from Minneapolis, and where the ground is flat, you know, and I'm like, this is not flat. So I wanted to bring in, and you know, where you take the water through the site and you store the water and you put it back in the aquifer. And no, they got a Turkish engineer came in and put a big pipe through the whole place. So, and they put more green grass out there because that's what they want to see. It's the same thing. You saw a picture of Azerbaijan. It's a desert, but they have all the water they want. It's that large in Baku development, and from canal water, you know, whereas in Iraq, you can see all the green grass. I try to bring in desert. I go, because it is a Mediterranean desert. It's kind of like Las Vegas, you know, you can grow anything. It was like an underground sea at one time. The soils, it's all very fertile. which you never would have thought about, but this is northern Iraq. And I would like to have seen it. This is prior, they'll plant trees, they'll have palm trees and stuff all over it, but this is the beginning stages, but I think it's way too much grass.
Okay, interesting. Well, that's the look they want, I guess. So.
You know, whereas I mean, at Saudi, they've got me down. You get this much water, and you know, and I'm trying to make it so I'm using actually less of the water that they've allocated for the golf course out of their desal plant.
Interesting. Okay, well, you know, we're got a few minutes to go, I think, to take some Q&A, some questions. I guess, should we cue that up?
Sure. Thanks, Ken. This has been so informative so far, but we have a couple of questions from the audience that I can go through. We'll start first with a question from Greg. As everyone knows, we're coming close to the end of Women's History Month. And so this is a nice question that kind of lends itself to that area. How do you manage to balance your work and raising 5 children? I know you've talked about spending a lot of your career in Japan and traveling. So what was that balance like? And maybe any advice you have to some of the female attendees?
I mean, I had a lot of support. I'm from a large family, so I relied a lot on them. You know, we support, as Ken said, we support each other. So whether it was my sisters or whoever, my husband, you know, I mean, golf is popular with men, so he kind of liked the work I was doing and the places we would go. So he's very much the hands-on dad. We didn't travel together. He does more of the business development in our company, whereas I am the hands-on architect. So we made it all work with the kids. And I now have 3 grandchildren. They're grown, but I don't know, they're still kids. But yeah, that's, I think, one of the discouraging things for women in this business is the fact that you have to choose. Men don't even like to choose that type of travel these days. You know, they're much more involved in their families were when I was raised. So I think that's one of the reasons you don't see a lot. I usually see the same group of people that do international work.
Sure, that makes sense.
And a lot of them are young, you know, these guys are young and they have young families, and I've been there. I know what that's like. I mean, I kind of think back, you know, when I watch my kids raising their kids, going, how did they do it? I guess it turned out okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a tough decision for anybody to make, you know, and anything that's going to require you to be away from your family.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll now pivot to a question from Mike, and he's asking, what are some of the takeaways from a course design perspective we can use to focus on how to improve our games, especially when you're just seeing a course for the first time? For the first, you know, I was always amazing when I go out and play a golf course with somebody that hasn't played, because I know how to read a golf course. Yeah.
You know, I'm like, well, I can tell, oh, you're supposed to hit it here, you know, and a lot of people just don't understand the strategy behind the golf hole. They're doing much better in, you know, in the yardage books and the explanations. If you want, you know, study that is also on the internet. If you want to study a golf course before that actually describes how you should play that golf hole, there's different, you know, there's a lot of things out there. You can go on any golf course practically and get a flyover. And a lot of times they give the architects, you know, taking you through the golf course, and this is the way you should play it. So you know, seeing a golf course for the first time is always difficult, but, you know, keep it on the high side, if you ask me.
And I'll kind of take a part of John's question for now, because you're talking about how kind of the resources for golfers have evolved over the last couple of years. So, you know, equipment, technology, turf technology, how is that changing the game right now?
Oh, turf technology is incredible. That's actually caused for a lot of remodels because this, especially on greens. I think my uncle, made a point before he passed on to go in and soften a lot of his greens because the speed of grass has changed so drastically. And when he first built like Crooked Stick in Indiana, the green speeds were much slower. And they go, well, if you're going to put that type of bent grass on, you got to take some of the roll out of these greens. So I think we've really focused on green designs a lot on what the speeds of greens are going to be and the type of grass, because summer grass, cool season and warm season grasses are they play completely different.
Yeah, a lot to take into consideration as you step onto the course for sure.
Yeah.
A lot to learn. We'll do a couple easy ones. Do you have a favorite hole that you've designed? It's a question from Diane.
Let's see. The one I haven't built yet. It's really, everybody would say, well, what's the signature hole? That's the first thing people ask you when you go on a golf course. And I'm like, I like them all. And it's really the players that are going to pick it. You might pick one golf hole. And I know, like at a golf course I did in Utah, they love this par 5 because it's a screaming hill down par 5, and they can, it's like over 6,000 yards. And and they can hit it in 2, and that's all they talk about. So, it wouldn't have been my signature hole. I didn't even like building par 5s. But, so usually it's the most, I would say, the one I probably is going to be in Portugal, because you fell in love with all the golf holes, but some of those are really spectacular. The set, and it's not just the golf hole, it's the setting.
Yeah. That is a nice segue into Kim's question. Is there a place on your bucket list that you haven't designed a course yet, but you'd love the opportunity to do so?
I'll take one of those at Bandon. Yeah, obviously coastal. I would like to, and I have the opportunity. I love the Caribbean. My uncle did a lot of work down there. I'd like to be able to go down to the Caribbean and work someday.
Yeah, I actually played one of his courses on my honeymoon in Curacao, and it was a hot day, and that was a hard course. But it was a lot of fun. So one question from Howard is, do you play golf, and what is your handicap, if you want to share? You don't have to share if you don't.
Yes, I play golf. I'm not a great golfer. As I said, I when I was young, kids weren't on the golf course, much less women, but I was sent away to tennis camp, and I played tennis all my life. And so not until I got older did I really start playing golf. Now, I'm more of an athlete, so it didn't really bother, I kind of just get up and swing at it. So I keep it pretty simple on the golf course. I don't try to over analyze it. And it seems to me, yeah, I don't hit it as far as I get older, but I still play the same game, and I'm a 16 handicap.
And then this kind of goes back to some of the technology questions we had asked earlier. Tony asked, have any of the players' use of rangefinders influenced your design? And knowing that people can do so much research before they step up to the tee box.
No, that doesn't. The rangefinders are, hey, I don't carry one, but I'm always asking the person, how far is it? I usually can tell, I know I'm going to hit this club. I'm not that accurate. But I know that, I can look at it and kind of judge the distance. But when somebody pulls out their rangefinder, I go, oh yeah. And I think it helps a lot of people get around the golf course. And it speeds it up, shoot, nothing's worse when people go 3 times back to their cart to get a club.
Right. Yeah, and you talked about accessibility and the length that, the time it takes to play 18 holes. And
Yeah.
so some of this does just make it more accessible for people.
And the new rules of golf too. Look at, it's all about, don't pull the pin out, keep it moving, So I think all that is trying to accommodate the new market though. And Ken, I'll tell you, I was reading some of it. It's 65% of the golfers are more than that, are 75 are above the age of 65, and it's going to get more because of the baby boomers. They play what do they play? It's like 36 rounds a year average. So you're thinking about an age group that's 65 years old, that your predominant players on the golf course. They're not playing long golf courses.
Right. Ken, I see you've had your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, it was interesting because Cynthia was saying she wasn't that good at golfer, and I'm curious, is it, and early she had mentioned that some of these other architects were really good golfers, and I was wondering how important it is to be a good golfer. In the same way that most managers of baseball teams were utility infielders who batted 200, because they studied the game. And I'm wondering from an architecture design standpoint, how important is it to be good? It's that old thing of Nicklaus hitting high fades, right? And every course he designed early on was a high fade because that was his idea of a good golf shot.
Right.
But I'm wondering how important that is for an architect.
I don't think it's important. Some people like to make an issue out of it. Oh, well, they I would say the average golf course architect isn't from a golfing background, and they're great golfers. Even golf writers. You had Ron Whitten play at your golf course.
Yeah.
They're not golfers. I mean, they live in. I don't have time to play that much golf, but I go out and play. I always stand on the back tee. I've always just gone up and stand on the tee that people are playing with, even though I don't sit, because you want to see it from that perspective. So I'm always looking at. I think it's more challenging for them to go up and look at from the ladies' tee. It's always kind of an after. Oh, just stick it here. Where I like to, as my Aunt Alice says, we don't like to just bump and run it all the time. We like to see a challenge out there too. So I'm always looking at it from everybody's perspective.
I will say that on Pete's courses, the tee is so important. I mean, it's remarkably important. I think, everyone knows that and says it, but I think the shots are so distinguished by where you hit from in the landing areas. And, you see a lot of courses where they just throw tees forward for women or for seniors or whatever. And, one has that great sense of precision. One has that sense that, kind of really asking you exactly what shot you think you're about to hit, So that's interesting. Thank you. Thanks.
We have one final question from Mark in the audience. From a course design perspective, are there certain features that facilitate the pace of play, or is that primarily on the players to ensure they're keeping up the pace with the pace of their actions?
The pace of play with features is to not put them in play for the average golfer. It's like, don't put a short right bunker off a tee. That's going to get them right away, because predominantly 95% of the people hit it right. So if you want to speed up the play, don't build a golf hole that is extremely long with a green that's sitting perpendicular to the second shot. You have to make it the approaches. Another thing I do, and which my uncle is, we give bailouts. If you don't have that shot to make it to the second shot to make it to the green, then look where you can hit it, and then get it on the green and putt. Instead of getting yourself in trouble that you don't know how to handle. Oh, I'm in that bunker again. Well, you can take another shot maybe a shorter club, headed to that area, and then chip it on and avoid that type of difficult that you don't know how to get it, or out of bounds is someplace, figure out the shot that you're capable of playing. And that's what people should do. Is most golfers think they're better golfers than they are. So if you would, be honest with yourself and say, hey, this is how I'm playing today. Maybe I'm just don't have it today. Think about how you're playing and your physical capabilities are before you hit the shot.
It's funny. A friend of mine the other day made a comment to me. He said, if you're on the range before you're around and you're hitting it left, then when you get on the golf course, aim to the right. That day, don't try to change it.
Yeah, it's no time on a golf course to correct your swing.
Exactly. Okay, I guess time is kind of gone by. I don't know, Amy, any other questions or anything else you want to get to here, or maybe we'll let Cynthia get back to designing a little bit.
Yeah, I think this was really informative, and we all kind of walked away with some new tips and tricks from Cynthia. So I just want to thank you on behalf of the MIT Alumni Golfers Association for coming and spending the afternoon with us and giving us some insights both into architecture and design, but just kind of your life and your passion for this work. I want to thank everybody who attended. We hope you enjoyed it, and welcome your feedback regarding other golf topics you'd like us to explore. I know our alumni golf members should be getting an email soon about our upcoming 3rd global golf tournament with a survey on how to make it even bigger and better. If you're interested in joining this community and you have yet to do so, I'm going to just put the link in the chat so you can head over to their website. But I just want to thank everyone. And hopefully you can tune in to the Women's Amateur in Augusta coming up, and then that other tournament, the Masters, that we all look forward to every year. So
they get 3 hours from 1 to it was 10 to 2 on Saturdays.
So tune in, and we'll see everyone soon. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Ken. And I did give some handouts that you can pass them off, and if anybody wants any additional questions, feel
Amy,
free
please
to.
do, because that lengthy track, that write-up was really interesting, I think, for people to understand some of the issues with sustainability and with golf courses. I think our audience would like to see that stuff. So
Anyway, if you have any
share
further
that.
questions, you have my contact information, and I'd be happy to answer.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Really
and thank you, Ken.
Sure enough.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Hit it straight.
Keep in the fairway.
All right, bye-bye.